Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Thanks for having us. My name's John Mao. Uh, like was mentioned, I lead a team responsible for our strategic technology partnerships at Vast Data. I don't know how many people are familiar with Vast Data, but hopefully in the next few minutes, you'll have a new perspective on the role that data may play in your organizations as you think about applying AI internally. So a quick update on just who Vast Data is for those who don't know. You probably haven't heard of us, but we are one of the fastest growing AI companies in the data platform and high performance storage infrastructure space. And the reason why you may not have heard of the company is that we sit behind and power a lot of the leading frontier model companies all around the world when it comes to model training. But more than that, increasingly, we're being chosen by large enterprises across a wide range of verticals to power some of their AI inferencing workloads as they start to apply AI inside of their organizations as well. So whether it's in financial services or in healthcare and life sciences, all around the world, we're helping organizations today. And so we have a very uh, kind of privileged view at how data is being strategized within these organizations and how they're moving forward. The other thing that we do that we're probably most famous for is that we work a lot with AI clouds all around the world. And that's where we deliver a lot of our storage services for some of these frontier model companies to do their training and also some of their inference serving too. Now, don't think this is a surprise, but most people know that the data within your organizations is, in this guy's words, the gold mine for your organization as you think about how to extract insight intelligence using AI. Now, there are a lot of different data types. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but when we talk about data, data ranges from a wide range of data in terms of structured data, whether it may be in operational data. It could be also in emerging data types using unstructured data, which I'll talk about in a second. And across these various data types, there's usually two main initiatives, two basic ROIs that are being looked at from executives at these organizations. One is usually one tied to business growth around revenue, and the other is some sort of internal productivity gains that the organizations are looking to enhance. Now, in order to extract that gold from the data that you're looking for, there are a couple of landmines that I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about based off of my experience traveling the world and talking to different enterprise organizations. And I wanted to go through each of these three and then talk a little bit about how VAST is helping those companies solve these problems today. The first one is around data silos and sprawl. Many of the organizations I speak with have on average somewhere between like 15 or 18 major data environments, whether they're databases, some sort of system of truth, system of record, some type of archive. And this sprawl makes it very, very challenging to understand what kind of data you have and how do you actually synthesize to unlock a lot of that data. I believe that in the next year, 2 years, in the coming years, there's going to be a change in the relationship between data within these enterprises. What most organizations thought of historically as a way to preserve data purely for record keeping and for archival is now being flipped on its side because that is oftentimes where a lot of the value comes that has been historically untappable from an infrastructure perspective. The second thing is unstructured data has also been one of the primary drivers from a capacity perspective. Almost 90% of most enterprise data actually is unstructured. So unstructured means different types of like non-database data, things that may be images or videos or documents or any other kind of files that are not represented within a database of sort. And the problem with this type of data is that up until very recently, with the advent of AI and new types of models, it's been extremely difficult to extract any kind of understanding across massive volumes of this data within the enterprise. And lastly, there's of course always a concern around data access and security. How do you apply AI from a data access perspective in the world of AI? Do you follow the traditional way of how we've implemented security using human ACLs, human ACLs? What does it look like when you start to deploy agents? And where do you enforce the security? Do you enforce this at the data layer? Do you enforce it at the AI layer, at the agentic layer, within guardrails, and on and on? There are a lot of decisions that have to be made here. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit about what VAST is doing, but these are kind of the key takeaways that I hope all of you can think about as you leave today, which is really focused around how you go about building a new type of data platform for your AI initiatives. The first one is that there has to be some sort of single source of truth. I talk about this with a lot of executive leaders all around the world, and the ability to have traceable and auditable source of truth of where the data came from for your agentic applications is very, very paramount. The other one is being able to synthesize all different types of data, whether they be structured data or unstructured data, and being able to do this as real time as possible is now feasible for the first time with AI. And the last one, like I said earlier, is something we have to think through is how do we enforce security moving forward at the data layer, not just at the agent level, but at the data layer itself. All right, so VAST, what does VAST do? So VAST is a software company. We built something we call the AI operating system. And the AI operating system is really a couple of different key components within an integrated solution that starts with data storage. So storage is really what we're famous for. It's what we're known for. We have now, I think, pushing 40 something exabytes of data under management around the world, but it's what we're most famous for, and that's in our data store. Our database is a new entry into the equation where we're now able to catalog and be able to provide structured and semantic meaning captured inside of a SQL database that can reflect a lot of the unstructured data that may be also stored within VAST. And data engine is something that now activates and unlocks a lot of the insight to the data by using AI, and this is where we actually orchestrate AI inferencing to tap into the data that's stored on our platform. And I'll talk about data space in just a second. All right, so the first thing that I think is probably very obvious, but it's a very hard problem to do, is understanding where your data is and what you actually have within your organization. Indexing and cataloging all the data is a very, very difficult job, especially because of all the sprawl that I talked about earlier on. There are a lot of solutions out there. VAST has a solution we call Sync Engine that can actually go and scan both file systems, object storage systems, but also SaaS applications to build a holistic and comprehensive catalog of all the different types of data you may have in your organization. And this is super important to give you a single source of truth about what the data is so that you can make determinations about what data you actually want to allow and use within your AI applications or not. The other thing that is very challenging for a lot of organizations is that you have teams oftentimes that are not physically located in the same place. They may be very geo-distributed by nature of your business. And therefore, it makes sense to still have storage and data systems close to your users. But again, how do you bring that all together into a single logical source of truth? We have a capability that also makes that possible that we call the data space. The data space effectively builds a single global namespace across all the different data types that you may have, while making it look like one single giant physical system for your agentic applications. Now, this unlocks a whole bunch of new use cases and deployment strategies when it comes to how you want to consume accelerated compute, how you want to adopt cloud computing for the compute side, even if the data is not physically there. I'm not going to have time to go into this today, but if you want to go and take a look, there was recently a case study with an end customer in the United States, but also one of our largest AI cloud partnerships in CoreWeave. They talk about what the global namespace really unlocks from both an AI training perspective, but also just helping users get better access to compute anywhere they may be. All right, making data ready. This is an interesting topic that's recently gotten more and more attention. This is a slide. I should have copyrighted this as this is NVIDIA's slide. Everyone's talking about AI factories these days. If you haven't heard about AI factories, AI factory is a term that's kind of taken hold across the industry. And in short, it's the ability to build out new types of infrastructure that allows you to power new applications that leverage accelerated compute. Obviously, this is where a lot of the models that were just talked about previous to the session, whether it's training, whether it's inference, that is what the AI factory is. But down below, you'll start to see and hear a new paradigm that will emerge, something called the AI data platform. And regardless of what you want to call this, I think there's a very interesting concept here that is being understood now as significant, especially for the enterprise market when it comes to your AI strategy. And that is you can now use AI inferencing to also extract insight and also extract intelligence from the data to basically build a giant source of truth for your agentic applications being served from the AI factory. We've built an entire operating system that enables that particular use case of the AI data platform to become simple, easy, and secure for organizations to deploy. This is an example in a partnership we had with NVIDIA that builds an end-to-end data pipeline for data platform use cases specifically. This is an example. I'm not going to have time to go into this, but if you think about a very simple example being whether it be a document, whether it be a video, whether it be any kind of unstructured data or structured data for that matter, there's usually a sequence of processing steps, some of which use new AI inferencing models to do extraction, to do embeddings, to do understanding of both images and videos, and be able to make that semantically searchable, being able to extract metadata, being able to do that all automatically. For the first time, we have technologies in the form of AI that can literally scan, analyze, understand the totality of enterprise data and put that all into context, which has never been done before in the history of IT and infrastructure computing. This is actually a slide from a project we've been working on for a couple of large enterprise customers to build their own private, effectively like their own private internal ChatGPT, but built entirely on their own private data behind their firewall. All right, I'm going to skip this slide in the interest of time. All right, lastly, security is obviously, like I said, a very, very popular topic to think about today. And there's not a single solution to solve this problem, but I think this is more of a challenge and something to provoke thought in how you should go about thinking about data security and data moving forward. So there's a very simple example just to kind of help conceptualize what this means from our perspective when we talk about security. So if you go back to the previous example about maybe it's a RAG version of a use case that maybe an enterprise is looking to deploy. A common, very basic, trivial example of this is that you would take data in to a system, you would do some sort of chunking, you would run it through some embedding models, you would store the output into a vector database, you would make that then searchable and queryable. That's just a very simple example. We've done this in partnership, like I said, with not only NVIDIA, but also a lot of other frontier model companies and open source models to prove this out. Now, the question to ask yourself here, and don't pay so much attention to the particular workflow here. I don't think that's the relevant part. There are other ways to build different types of data platform systems like this. You could use, different types of markdown files. There's lots of different formats in which you can do this. But the question that we need to ask is how do we go about encapsulating security at the data layer itself? And so one example that you could take, just for thought, is you could choose to embed or store the permissions at the system level whenever that data comes into the platform. So for example, in this very simple example, you could take things like the permissions for a given user or permissions for a certain file or permissions on a certain bucket or an object and apply that as a trivial policy to enforce that at the database layer. So now as you go through that process of embedding and chunking and embedding, that example I just gave on this previous slide, you could also store permissions as another field and as another queryable field at the data layer. This is no different than traditional applications where you enforce role-based or access-based controls within a database. You can now apply the same logic inside close to the AI version and inference version of that data itself as a way to push the security model down into the data layer itself. We've had customers that have come to us in their early stages of building out AI applications where they built in security at the application level itself, using AI, for example, with certain policies and prompts, it doesn't work very well. It's very inefficient, and it's usually not 100% accurate. And when it comes to security, accuracy is a binary choice. It's got to be a binary outcome for most organizations. So the way that we solved this for a couple of organizations is we went ahead and pushed a lot of the permissions down into the database, down into where we represent the semantic understanding of the data. In this example, it could be a cat picture, for example. And what you can see from this slide is that we can now store permissions such as which users, which groups, based off of your local LDAP, Active Directory, single sign-on, OAuth, whatever it may be. We can store that down in the database, and that is now guaranteed to never return data that a user at an LLM or an agentic level could ever return into their response because of this passing of the user credential all the way through into the data layer. All right, so that's basically it. When I think about what we're seeing on the forefront of building out new AI infrastructure for agentic applications, the data layer becomes a very integral part of the decision making when you're building out those new environments. And one of the things that we're very proud of is that we have been working with AI companies not only on bringing a lot of these AI technologies to market, but now how do we actually bring these technologies into an applied sense within the enterprise market? So hopefully that will give you some ideas of what to look for, what to consider when you're building out your own agentic applications with AI. If you have any questions, if you haven't heard about VAS, we have a whole team here. I think we'll still be here until 5, I don't know. But we'd love to talk to you about your projects and give you a little bit more insight into how we're going about solving that problem. Thank you very much.